I think we also need to not lose sight of the real world in which we live, which is the environment. And the more we push our planet further, the fewer choices we will have, and the more choices will be made for us, irrespective of what the future is. The only good thing about, I mean, if you look at how much we invest in healthcare and that type of stuff, and how little we invest in our environment, the only good news is that we'll live long enough to see how stupid we were.
Yes, which will bring me to my second question, which is the burning deck question. As you probably know, Joseph Schumpeter, an economist, lived a while ago, and he wanted to be the best economist in the world, the best horse rider in Austria, and the best lover as well. And he achieved two of those. And his main contribution was looking at the way we innovate, mainly when there is a burning deck, in other words, when there is a bloody great big crisis, or a war, or both. Can we, Jason, innovate, have bright ideas, without those two, sometimes, well, always unwelcome prompts?
I guess it's like we're drifting towards a waterfall. We can hear the noise, we can see the mist, but until we actually see the bubbling water, we don't actually react. And I can see the beginnings of change everywhere. And I think what will frighten people is the timescales in which change will happen. And what will also enlighten people and surprise people is the ingenuity of mankind that will be delivered to resolve those wicked problems.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, the Parliament in Canberra is debating something that happened 17 years ago in some sort of crime or not. I mean, day after day after day, we're not discussing what you manifestly say, and Michael, you've hinted at some of the gigantic environmental problems that we face, but something which could be, and I have no opinion because I work at the BBC, rather minimal. Iain, burning deck, how do you face these problems?
Well, like Jason, I'm a great believer that humanity is incredibly inventive and resourceful, and that also we're much less predictable than people think. That's been one of the lessons, had we needed to learn it, that came out of the financial crisis. We really can't say what we are able to do, but what that mustn't become is a kind of excuse for laziness. In other words, oh, we can carry on polluting today, we'll find a technology that will clean it up tomorrow, because we may, or we may not, and by then it'll be definitely too late. So, yes, I think it's wonderful that we're ingenious, and I think we're most resourceful when we're pushed up against the wall. What you need people to see is we're up against the wall now, not later. And it's a question of getting that broad picture. Unfortunately, we tend to see things very narrowly about here today.
Well, the waterfall analogy applies perfectly to the issue of aging and the inevitable problems we're about to face with this aging population. Now, obviously, one of the major questions that people always ask when you have this conversation is, what do you want to gum up the planet for with all these old people, even if they are healthy and wealthy and living the life of Ryan? I mean, maybe the trick is to just get rid of them and make room for the next. So I was having this conversation with someone who made, I thought, a very clever point, which was, well, if people know that they're going to live to 200, they might take better care of the planet that they're on than if they know that après moi le déluge, and it's only in a matter of 20 years, and at least I won't see that problem. The other point is that actually limiting birth is a much more effective way of population control than limiting death, because it just works out mathematically that if you increase the entire population's capacity to live a healthy life by 20 years, you actually have a modest, very modest effect on the number of people on the planet compared to limiting the explosion in population that we just heard about. So I think ultimately we're going to have to deal with the fact that we're living longer. We're going to have to deal with the fact that we're hopefully going to live healthier. Whether we know what the hell we're going to do with all that extra time is a fantastic question, and I think it's a wonderful thing to think about. But we obviously, some people don't have even the option to live as long as they'd like, and I think at that level we still have some reasons to push for better health at a later age.
Two more quick comments and we have dinner.
Well, your burning deck story, it's interesting. I am a student of history and the behavior of people. I try to build computer things to solve that or to address that, or at least confront that. So my friends and I, three friends of mine, And I sat in my dining room and we came up with Google Earth, what's now Google Earth. And 10 years later, it's used by 1 billion people. One of the things that we had in mind for that was that humans would see their planet. That it wouldn't be that you would hear in the newspaper that the coral reef was dying. We would put you in the coral reef. We launched 2 months ago, Underwater Street View. You can go through the Great Barrier Reef. You can see beautiful, incredible things. You go a little bit further, it's all bleached white, right? And so I've seen that show to my father, and he almost cried. He's in his late 80s. He's very ill. And he said, "Son, what can we do about that?" I said, "Nothing. You can't do anything about that." That is, 1 billion people need to make a change. I mean, not that you can't be one of 1 billion, but I mean, there needs to be a huge understanding that we're at a precipice, and they don't see that because they're not fish. They don't live in the place where the reef is sick, and they're not all divers. But I can put it in front of 1 billion people in 3 months, and so I feel obligated to do that. The hope is that they see it, they might make a better decision. So much of what we do in Google Earth, Google Maps, Google is not politically steering people, but is trying to put the information of the world in front of people, so hopefully their own judgment will help them realize the issues, the burning deck, or at least the slow trend towards problems earlier in that cycle, and allow less draconian solutions that are more feasible.
Okay, I think I'm going to be quite heretical. I don't think I believe in your burning deck hypothesis. Because I'm last, I had the time to think up 3 examples. One was the development of quantum theory at the beginning of the last century. Now, that wasn't there to solve some urgent social need or problem. It was this most brilliant new insight into what was to take 60 years before it was translated into the transistor and therefore the computer, or the nature of the chemical bond and crystallography and so on. Another example was your wonderful Barry Marshall, your wonderful scientist, medic, who in the 90s challenged the dogma about ulcers and then won the Nobel Prize. Another great heroine of mine, during the war, she was Jewish and therefore forbidden for practicing medicine, Rita Levi-Montalcini, who therefore set up in her own home a lab and started work on something called nerve growth factor that again led to the Nobel Prize. Now, these people weren't firefighting. These people weren't on a burning deck. These people were genuine scientists who were really curious about the world and about things. And I would like to think that some of us, at least, just want to find out how the brain works, for example. There's not some... great if along the way we can cure Alzheimer's. But I think that it's doing scientists down to think they're there just as firefighters and solving problems. I think that a lot of what we do is founded in genuine curiosity without any obvious or immediate application. Yeah.
It's interesting that we've got in this series, I mentioned starting this year, Howard Florey, the genius behind penicillin, when asked whether that incredible discovery was part of the war effort, he said, no, we did it because it was a good idea.
Exactly.
But that was science. We're talking about innovation as well, the broader application.
Well.
And we'll come to that in half an hour's time.